I'm here today with Marianne McGowan, who was IFAS's previous survivor liaison research worker and who is a member of the IFAS survivor group. Welcome to you both. And during this podcast, we're going to be discussing the background of the survivor group, the different projects that the survivor groups have been involved in, and the future of the survivor collaborations with IFAS. So as Marianne was with IFAS since the beginning, and Aisha has played an integral part in both of the projects, I'm just really grateful and just wanted to say that I was really grateful to be able to sit down and discuss these with you today.
Thank you so much.
So Marianne, I wanted to begin by asking you, could you tell me a little bit about how the survivor group first came about?
So my role was part of the IFAS team from the beginning. I think that the individuals who set up IFAS really wanted the survivor voice to be at the heart and center of like everything we did. And that was kind of off the back of the importance of lived experience through the campaign for the change in legislation and things like that. So from the outset, it was just, it was really important that someone had my specific role to actually do that, to embed lived experience in different ways. So the group, I would say, kind of organically happened because we just had individuals that we'd reached out to who'd been involved in other projects kind of related and who we'd been connected with through other organizations, again, that were connected with IFAS. And then over time, more and more people just got in touch, kind of sharing their own lived experience, whether they saw us on social media or other kind of platforms, just like sharing their experience. And because there was then a group that was just the offer is, do you want to meet as a group and create actually a lived experience group, much like other services do as well. You know, there are plenty of other organizations with lived experience groups or that are doing kind of expert by experience and things like that. Establishing the group came about organically and then was offered as a choice to people who got in touch with us if they wanted to be part of it or whether they wanted to just do like individually contribute to our work as well. So that's how it came about.
Fantastic. Yeah, then the organic kind of development sounds a lot better in terms of it was something that, you know, it was kind of thought about through the development of creating IFAS, but then it just all kind of happened without even really needing to do too much to bring everybody together.
Yeah, I think we knew it would be important, and it is a way that people, you know, embed lived experience in their organizations is having a group. But yeah, it was just that then the numbers kind of grew and people were interested and that people then attended and wanted to be part of it, which ultimately made the group, you know.
Yeah, fantastic. And obviously you worked since the inception of IFAS through to, you did about 2.5 years, didn't you, through to the end of 2025. I just wondered if you could tell us a little bit about how through your experience working with IFAS.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the heart and centre of it was a trauma-informed approach, and we were very lucky we had partnership organisations to help with kind of developing like our approach to it, or like not necessarily a policy, but more of our approach or like a guidance on how we would do things. And that was kind of adapted from Safe Lives, who had developed a toolkit from their lived experience group on how and why to do things, and we then adapted it based on our ways of working and the needs of the organisation. I would say trauma-informed principles are at the heart of that, really trying not to re-traumatize people, thinking about their options and like how we could empower them as through being part of the group or through contributing to IFAS, and kind of balancing that with helping them to work out how they wanted to contribute and what they wanted to get out of IFAS, I think was really, really important. It took a lot of back and forwards, and then also like trial and error. You know, once people started getting in touch with us and we developed the group, like that was something we had to work out as we went along as well.
Yeah, and were there any specifically, you said kind of not policies exactly, but kind of practices, like what would you be able to talk a little bit more about kind of any of the practices that you worked on through the survivor group?
Really, I guess, just come back to those trauma-informed principles, but also then trying to be led by the survivor group as to what they wanted to happen. I mean, that again, I use the word balance, because for a big part of it, it's like working out with people what they want to achieve versus what our organizational aims and goals are. So if I bring training as an example, and we wanted lived experience to be part of that and to help develop the training, there was a bit of like, do you want to help develop the training? Yes. How do we do that? Like working that out, as in people come and saying, well, I've never developed a training before, so what do you expect me to do? So having to be guided by us in some ways as well. So yeah, I think in terms of principles, it's kind of like working those things out together. Communicating well was kind of the key way of doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that collaborative approach, like right from the beginning, wasn't it? Probably helped like iron out some of that trial and error, I would say.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, fantastic. And Aisha, I wanted to know a little bit about how you kind of first came across the group.
Yeah, I've had to really think hard about this. I was racking my brains because it just feels like I'm part of the furniture now. It's like IFAS is just the other thing that I do, and I really enjoy it. It's so fulfilling. And as Marianne was saying, the trauma informed approach has been like really strong, has been really effective, and I think IFAS has always been really responsive to the survivor needs and what we've talked about and the issues that we've raised, and like the discussion's been really like open and just really fluid. But I think when I first got involved, it was because the experience that I'd had in 2018 of NFS was just awful, and the police response was awful, and just a real mess. And I'd began to just make some noise, I think, on Twitter and like various other social networks that got picked up by the Centre for Women's Justice when they were campaigning for the NFS charge to be included in the domestic abuse bill, I think, in 2020, because I remember it was like COVID time when it all started happening, and it was just really bizarre because here was me with this experience thinking that this was so unique, that I hadn't been listened to, that this crazy traumatic thing had happened to me, and that it was just completely glossed over. And then there was this whole other group of people who were saying, no, we have experienced this as well, and we want people to speak out about it, and we are going to get the government to sit up and listen. So I became involved with that and giving my account, and then through my contact with the CWJ, I was then put in touch with Marianne at IFAS, and I kind of had no idea first going into it what was going to happen, or if it was going to be a bit of a one-off thing. And yeah, this was like a bit later down the line, a couple of years after I'd got married, I was having my own child and things like that. So it was like, oh, you know, what's going to happen here? But I was really interested to be involved, and met Marianne, spoke to her, and yeah, just found that it was a really beautiful way to kind of channel my feelings about this particular event in my life. So yeah, we went forward from there, and there was the different projects, and then obviously the survivor focus group, and it's just connected me with some really amazing people, to be honest. Yeah, love it.
Fantastic. I'm really, really happy to hear that you've had such good feedback and such a good process going through. I wondered, you said you mentioned working with kind of the Centre for Women's Justice as well. I mean, was that a similar experience as working with IFAS, or was it quite a different experience of how you worked with them?
It's a bit different. I've given accounts to them, and they've been equally as supportive. But the projects they're not as specific, because obviously they're working on a range of different things. But I've worked with them on a couple of different things with regards to the criminalisation of survivors as well, and just things that are really close to my heart. And it gives you such a sense of peace to see that there's work being done in these areas as well. So I do think that it's such a vital organisation. But, you know, having IFAS that are just specific to NFS and investigating how that is present in society, in media, in people's minds, the people's idea of it, of what it is, the way that the law handles it, I just think that's absolutely crucial, which is so needed.
Yeah, definitely kind of having that niche that niche understanding would
Definitely.
moving forward. Absolutely. I really liked what you said then about kind of having a bit of a sense of peace. Obviously that must feel really great.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And kind of what made you feel like it was the right time or the right space to join something? You said it took a couple of years to kind of move into this and work with Marianne.
I suppose it's, to me, these things have just come my way because I've got obviously quite a spiritual outlook on life, and they've just been sent to heal me and to help me. And, you know, that was the only thing that I could do. If you're going to experience something like that in your life and it's going to stay with you, then you have to do something with it. You can't, it's almost like you are accountable for your healing. Like, obviously that person's accountable for what they've done, but, you know, when you take your part of the healing process and the trauma that goes with it and things like that, you have to take some action. To me, I wanted to see justice done. I wanted to share my experiences. I wanted to share my experiences with other people so that they could feel that they could come forward as well, and that there was, you know, there were specialist organisations looking into this. And ultimately, I was looking for something. I was always willing and open to speak about this because I knew that the way that I was treated and the way that the police response was not right, and that was very clumsy, and that there was a lot of work to be done, and there was a lot of, you know, questions to be answered, really, and that people needed to hear about what I'd been through. Because I've said to Marianne quite a few times in the past, it felt like something from a TV programme where you're sat at home watching and you think, oh, that's made up for a storyline, and like that is crazy that's happened, and you're rooting for the character and rooting for them to get justice and for someone to recognise what's happened to them, and then it never happens. And as a viewer, you sit there thinking, like, oh gosh, this is really awful, and it's a bit of a cliffhanger, and I want to carry on watching and see what happens. And that was me, and that was my life. It wasn't on a TV programme. So to me, it was just like, the reality of it was just completely unbelievable, and it was something that just drove me to just really raised my voice, and no one could tell me to stop in the end.
No, fantastic. And yeah, amazing for you to feel like that kind of motivation from something that's happened to you, and yeah, all of the, as much as the event, like everything that kind of came after that as well. I mean, we'll definitely get onto that when we move into more of the project topics in a bit. I was just wondering as well, kind of did you have any expectations when you joined the Survivor group, and kind of how did they meet them or not meet them?
I wasn't really sure, actually. I wasn't really sure how it would happen, but I think it just exceeded any kind of imagination that I could have, because when we all get together as a group, the strength and the positivity and the ideas and the creativity that comes out of it, it's just really moving and it's really refreshing. It's invigorating, honestly. It's so nice. You go away from it just feeling so refreshed, so energized, that a group of survivors could come together and have such a powerful impact with their stories, and the way that people speak with so much clarity on what has happened to them. I can't believe it, honestly. I really can't believe it. And it just makes me absolutely intrigued into, you know, what might happen in the future with IFAS.
I would agree. I think being, you know, privy to those groups and facilitating them in some shape or form, there is something very special about a group of women who are all very different, all different ages, living all over the UK, coming together to talk about a shared experience, and also just acknowledging that people are at different points too. That always really stuck out with me. It's like some people it had happened to a few months ago, or like in the past year. Some people it was more like 6 years, and so people were able to kind of help normalize what other people were going through at different points, and say like, oh, I felt like that too, you know. And that from then, like individual sessions that I would have around feedback after, I think really help people, is like actually hearing that someone else has been through something like that, or that, you know, they're now doing this type of work. It's kind of inspiring, and it gives people a bit of faith that, or hope that they can do the same.
And Marianne, you said about obviously your role was kind of the facilitator. How did you facilitate kind of those different points? And obviously you mentioned feedback sessions there. I wondered how that kind of worked as well.
Yeah, I mean, it was all facilitated online. For the most part, we people were just very respectful. I mean, at some points I would have had to like say, can we give other people an opportunity to speak, or just try and check in with people to make sure they've got opportunities to speak. But generally people were very good about muting, unmuting, and being able to share their points. I never had any real issues with that. So yeah, and we often set an agenda. Sometimes we didn't, particularly if there was new people, someone new coming, maybe we wouldn't set so much of an agenda. And I would always try and let other people know, like, there's someone new coming today. So, and I think when you share that, some people show up because of that reason, even if people make time for it then. And I think that's incredibly special too, and just shows the power of how much other people care as well, which is important.
Yeah, just wanting to help support, absolutely. And did you say that you did kind of feedback sessions with everybody after meetings as well?
It would have just been like individual conversations with people, so not explicitly feedback, but I would have said, how have you found that, if I was meeting with them individually, say the week after a meeting. So it wasn't so formal in that it was a feedback session. But yeah, just in terms of getting their feedback on how the groups were going.
And even the idea generation that comes after them, when you'd have that feedback session or you'd have that individual conversation with Marianne, it was like you just feel inspired and you get a different idea, or you maybe you're able to suggest something. And the other thing that actually I was just thinking to mention is the way that everyone would help each other to explain was really nice. So if someone was talking and then their thought process kind of trailed off, or they were kind of struggling to find the words, or they couldn't quite explain what they meant, then other people would sort of jump in and help them to kind of clarify, oh, do you mean this, or do you mean that we could work on a project about social media, or we could go into schools, or we could do this, we could do that. And it was just really nice, lovely. It's like everyone just knew each other from the beginning. It was wonderful.
And say it almost sounds like kind of one brain, doesn't it, if one person isn't quite sure? And did that help with kind of language and kind of understanding your experience a little bit more, if somebody was able to come in and kind of finish off your sentence about something that you were struggling to say?
If you're trying to talk about something and you sort of get a bit emotional, and then someone else helps you or mentions something and you're able to sort of process it a bit more, it's really nice. And I think peer support in those sort of situations is great. I'm a big advocate for peer support in that type of situation, because I think, like Marianne said, people are at different points, and it allows them to see, like, well, that person's doing that now, so I can have the self-belief to push myself in that direction, and vice versa. So yeah, really, really nice.
Fantastic. Yeah, it sounds like such an empowering space to be part of. And one of the other parts, as much as working with the survivor group as well, is that you've worked on a couple of projects within IFAS as well. So I wanted to move on a little bit more towards them. So I wondered, you talked about how kind of ideas were bouncing around within the group. I wanted to know how the Reclaiming Your Voice project, like who came up with it, whether it was collaborative, kind of what the process was of developing that project.
Create a way to kind of demonstrate and celebrate what we achieved as a group, and kind of capture the importance of having a lived experience group in an organization like IFAS. So that was from us. It was like, right, can we as an organization set aside some money to develop a project, which means people can be remunerated for their time in part of an interview, so that we can create resources, a video and a report and things like that. And yeah, we were able to do that, set aside some money to do that. So that was kind of the initial starting point, and then it was to the group, like, how should we do this and who would like to be involved. And we did individual interviews for that one, and then kind of drew the themes back, wrote up a report, and created a video as well, and tried to make that as iterative as we could too, as in consulting people on how it would look, or getting their feedback on kind of the storyboard and things like that. So yeah, it was both kind of came from IFAS, but was also collaborative as well, as most of the projects really were.
So be pinpointed as well in terms of, like, what IFAS could work on with different professionals and things. So I think the fact that it was called Reclaiming My Voice was really poignant, and a lot of the language and the stories that it represented were like, I don't know, just so heartfelt. So I was really proud that it went out there and it's available for people to see, so that they can really get an insight into the experience, because I think that, to me, that's what it was about. It was trying to give other people an insight into, you know, if they've not had that experience, then give them a way to like have empathy with people who have had that experience, and also, you know, to see and celebrate the work that IFAS does, and in the way that it does give people that empowerment, it does give people that way to come back and you know, like you say, use that experience for some good, and just show their strength. Yeah.
Fantastic. I would just give the listener a little bit of context, because I realised that would be quite helpful. So the Reclaiming My Voice,
of like the importance of like that organization existing, and like given kind of it really demonstrating that an organization and the government who have funded it take seriously this issue that that women mainly are being subjected to, and how big of an issue it is, like on its own, and how much of a horrific kind of experience someone goes through that's quite separate to other forms of violence. So that was something I thought was really important that came through of it. It was like their kind of experiences, that it was really valuable to have a service that was explicitly existing for that form of abuse.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. Because I'm in a role now where I support other people who, you know, may have experienced this as well, and their experiences and what they say ring true with, you know, my experience, with the things that I've heard from other survivors within IFAS, within, you know, the Reclaiming My Voice project, and it really helps to like pick out those common themes of what people have experienced that's specific to NFS, which is so important. And I just always relate back to that original experience of thinking like, why is no one recognizing how scary and how difficult this is, and why is everyone kind of focusing on different parts of this assault, and not this you know, the strangulation part, which is so difficult and so harrowing and so hard, and gives you so many kind of nightmares and flashbacks. And it's like, to me, that was just such a life-changing event, and it wasn't being picked up, it wasn't being recognized, and to have IFAS there now to recognize that in different forms and different scenarios, it's just amazing.
Absolutely, because I think that's one of the things that crosses over both the projects that IFAS has done, is that we're not afraid to kind of shy away from the difficult topics as well. So even within a project where we're talking about celebrating being able to reclaim that voice, it's not overshadowing the original point. So I wondered how you felt being in part of a research, and how you kind of coped with having to discuss probably some of those more difficult topics.
Yeah, it's sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's hard, and it gets harder the further away you get from it. Sometimes, like, you think it's going to get easier, and the further away you get from it, and the further down the line you get from it, actually becomes harder. Because I think when you've originally come out of like the experience, you go through what I call the telling everybody everything stage, where you want to shout from the rooftops and tell everyone, because you want someone to believe you, and that's what IFAS gave me, was that validation that someone believed me. You know, and it can be hard at times, listening to yourself and reflecting on it and thinking, oh gosh, like, I have actually got to process this myself now, and I've got to look at my life and what's happened as a result of it. And, you know, like, you almost originally sort of disassociate, and it's like watching someone else go through it, like I mentioned before, in terms of like watching someone else on a TV program. So when you do get a bit further down the line and you realize that, oh gosh, that was me, there's lots of different parts to the healing process. But I think IFAS made that really easy, in terms of like the validation, how I felt listened to, and just the other survivors, like the safety of the environment, the risk management's taken really seriously. Even things like the fact that I've got dyspraxia, and Marianne would do risk assessments with me, and even talk about that and bring it up, you know, in each different project, and the way that might relate to, you know, what I've been through or what I'm going through. And people were always there, or I always felt that people were available. I could speak up, or I could have the choice to participate if I needed to. If not to participate, sorry, if I needed to. But ultimately, remembering that it's worth its weight in gold, like that experience, and sharing it with people, and also the fact that other people aren't here to share their experiences, or might not be able to because of circumstances that might be legal, then they might be too frightened, or whatever else. Whereas I felt privileged actually to be in that position where I could say, actually, there may be a minimal risk out there, but actually I can talk about this experience, and maybe it is going to help other people, and it's something that, we don't know how deep this really runs in society. Even I don't, because we're still yet to uncover, like, completely why this is happening, what goes through people's minds. And it's like Marianne was touching on before, it's such a specific type of abuse, which is very, it can be very covert, it can be very hidden, but it has such long-lasting effects as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And within the Reclaiming My Voice project, we had kind of two.
It just touches so many areas. Like it spread through society, and when you really sit down and think about it, and you think about, okay, like, yeah, this is, like, I'm learning about other people's experiences and about how to handle my own experience, and I'm getting inspiration from people, and then I'm helping to educate, like, lots of different professionals. It's been mind-blowing, really. So yeah, it's interesting when you think about the impact it could have, and the level of severity that, like, this has in society. It's just crazy.
Absolutely.
Just to add on to that, it was definitely came through in, like, people, getting in touch and being part of the group and learning from others and kind of validating their own experiences, or even, things like reviewing a patient information leaflet and things like that. It's like learning more about what research says and what people's experiences are, and then, like, that kind of validating things that the survivors had been through as well. And then, yeah, as you said, that people should be using. So yeah.
It actually, you know what, I've just had, like, a flashback to helping with the patient information leaflet, and that was so enjoyable. Like, it was really interesting to see, like, this could really shape someone else's experience, and to feel like an integral part of, like, shaping someone else's experience in the future. Like, that was really nice. And understanding it, I remember going through that with you, Marianne, and then realizing, like, that, oh, maybe I should actually go back to the doctor and get some extra, like, checks, because maybe I'm experiencing, things, and just discovering, since we did that there are things about my memory or hearing or vision, that may have possibly been affected, and essentially, I suppose I'll never really know at this point, but just having that awareness now that, that I may have been affected more physically than I thought, in having that experience, was like a big thing. It was a big thing to go through, but like you say, it's validating, and it's also the fact that I've got IFAS there now as, like, a safety net, that I've got that information, and it's better to have information, isn't it, in any situation?
Yeah, agreed.
Absolutely. And Marianne, obviously, you've worked within a research capacity within this project as well. So you were listening to a lot of different experiences and all that kind of stuff. I wondered how you managed your process throughout working on this kind of research.
Yeah, I think it was, yeah, I mean, conducting the interviews and doing all the kind of transcription and analysing as well. Yeah, it was hard, but also, when there's a kind of overarching goal to create something that is meaningful, then, that's what kind of, yeah, I don't know what the word is. It's not steamrolls it, but like
just keeps you motivated almost.
Yeah, it keeps you motivated to do that. But yeah, it was like a very simple research approach in terms of conducting interviews, doing a thematic analysis of and qualitative research, doing a thematic analysis of the content, and kind of producing themes from that. So yeah, and we did something very similar with the project that came after that, and yeah, did that in groups, but yeah, took a very similar approach to the analysis and the kind of the thematic work too.
Fantastic. And before we move on to that next project, Aisha, I wanted to end on just kind of asking you that the project is called Reclaiming My Voice, and you've mentioned kind of the ideas around kind of making some noise and taking action, like in your previous responses. But I wanted to know what the phrase reclaiming my voice meant to you personally.
Oh, wow. It's so big. It's so big. It's really hard to summarize in just a few words. Reclaiming my voice. It's literally in some senses that, you know, obviously when that act happens to you, it does take away your voice to a point. So I think what it means to me is that you can reclaim your voice, like physically and mentally as well. You know, it's a bit of a it's a really nice phrase. It's kind of all encompassing that it represents. You can find yourself again, you can find your voice again, you can, you know, speak about your experience, and it takes away the shame as well, in a way. You know, the fact that you are able to speak about it with IFAS, because there's professionals who have got concern for you, and they understand that, you know, it's happening to other people, it's happening in society, and you're meeting other people that have had that similar experience as well. So I think that's one big thing that it does, is removes the shame from the experience, and the kind of the darkness around it, really. Yeah, so just flipping it into something that you can use in your life that's going to be positive eventually.
Absolutely. And as well as obviously the theme, kind of we've touched upon the themes of acknowledging the impact and having this impact. I think reclaiming my voice, or reclaiming your voice, sorry, really helps to come from. You also wanted to talk a little bit about kind of the bigger picture and a bit about context of kind of depictions of NFS in wider society. So I wondered if either of you wanted to come in on that as well.
Definitely. I've got a few ideas. Marianne, do you want to start?
Is that, sorry, in relation to reclaim my voice, or just generally?
Just in general, I think we talked about, like, the research did really well of like talking about kind of the concerns that survivors had on kind of depictions in wider society and things like that, and how we kind of start to move forward, and how I think one of the phrases was that there's a long way to go with this. So I wondered if we could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think that theme, or that kind of part of the research, came through because of the various different ways in which strangulation is present in, you know, our culture, whether that's, you know, conversations in schools, and it's about young people participating in it, strangulation during sex, in all sorts of different capacities. We discussed like there being a long way to go before we see kind of a reduction in these cases. And there's a really long way to go in terms of the education that needs to be put out there about the safety of doing that to someone and the risks associated with it. So yeah, it's, I think, something that IFAS continue to bear as an issue. Is that's kind of the central issue to the organisation continuing, is that, you know, the work is in its infancy, you know, 3.5 years at the minute. There's still a lot of work to be done to get this form of abuse on the decline.
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? Because it's, quite frankly, as a survivor, it's just really annoying when you see it on TV, and you see it in memes, and you see people joking about it, and you see song lyrics about it, and it's like it stops you from moving on, because you start thinking, well, like, this is a serious thing that could have killed me, and here's people making songs about it as if it's really kinky and funny and just something that happens in a regular, normal relationship, and that's not the message that we should be giving out to people. So that was one thing that I started to notice, I think, after my experience, was that you'd see a lot of memes and like jokes online about like choking, and people just thinking it was funny, and you know that it was just like a bit of a joke, and you could do that, and it was something like, oh, it's normal, like everyone does it. And you know, when you actually look at the medical evidence and you listen to what people have been through who've actually been strangled, it's like, well, it's clearly not a joke, and it's clearly really serious, and it's actually a really violent act, and it's quite psychotic. So why are we having this discourse, you know, that's continuing, where people just continue to keep talking about it? And also, one of the things I've raised with Marianne quite often is like that there's no warning on TV shows specifically about it. You might get a warning about domestic abuse or sexual violence, but you don't get that specific warning, and it's a bit shocking sometimes. You just, as a survivor, you settle down to watch a TV show, or even someone that might have witnessed it in the home, like, you know, with their parents or something like that, and you just think, oh, I'll watch this ITV drama or something, and then you actually see strangulation depicted. There is no warning, or there's nothing that comes before that to actually prepare you for it, which I think is something that kind of it needs to be addressed. It's like when you get warnings about, you know, discussions of suicide or anything else, there's always a helpline or a number or something. So I think there's a big kind of gap there in terms of the way that the media views strangulation. Is just like, oh, well, kind of like the same as punching someone maybe or something. I don't know. I don't know why people kind of gloss over it, and I'll always kind of come back to that, I suppose. So yeah, and then again with like with young people and with kids and memes and stuff online, I don't think they're doing it because they're seeing it. I don't think they're doing it because they're seeing it online. I think, but it doesn't help when we have this jokey kind of attitude around it of, oh, lighten up, or like, you know, and obviously that kind of whole side of things is getting worse with, you know, like the red pill kind of movements and stuff. It's getting worse, and you see it sort of like it's just coming to the surface, and strangulation is one of those elements of that, because it's such a controlling act where we do see it coming through. So I don't think the young people or teenagers or school kids that see it online and make jokes about it, I don't think they relate, and they're getting brainwashed into thinking that, like, yeah, that's okay, or whatever. So like I say, I don't think it's necessarily always the main trigger is that they've seen someone else doing it, or they've seen it in porn or whatever. I think it happens, you know, as an act on its own, but also, you know, having this culture around it that it's kind of nothing, or we can just ignore it, or it's part of normal kind of intimate relationships, is like big no. It's just so dangerous, and if that's left to fester, that could be so catastrophic.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, what you just said about not having kind of content warnings. I always think it's funny that content warnings kind of come after programs half the time, which I think is slightly, that's a whole different conversation, isn't it? But the fact that it's not specifically mentioned, it does almost like minimize the severity of it, and everything you said about like the culture of kind of trivializing strangulation as well is not understanding the severities of the actions. Absolutely.
It just makes you upset. It just makes you upset as a survivor. Like, it ruins your day. Like, you'll switch the radio on, and there's a song lyric about choking and stuff, as if it's just like, and it's like, why do they not bleep that out? Like, they would bleep something out if it was about guns, or if it was some other kind of misogynistic lyric, but that's allowed to stay in. And it just seemed to become, I don't know whether it was because I had that experience and then I started to notice it, and it was a bit of kind of, you know, I don't know what they call it, there's a term for it, isn't there, when something happens and you start to notice it more. I don't know whether it was that, but it just seemed to me that it became like a weird sort of fashionable thing. You know, I remember like having discussions with like potential partners as well, where like after my experience, and they'd say, well, can I not do that? Like, not ever. And I was like, are you actually effing for real? Like, seriously, you? And I just was like, are you copying someone? Where have you got this idea from? wasn't sure. I just wasn't sure, and I never thought that was something I'd have to broach as a subject, or I'd have to talk about or discuss with people. And when you think about the realities of that, it's like, yeah, it's national emergency, 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and having to speak about your partner and then almost having to educate them as well. I mean, that's something that, what does surviving mean to you, and what does thriving mean to you?
Surviving is, I think a lot of the time people don't realise when they're surviving, and they think they're drowning, and they think they're not surviving. And I think that's how I felt. I don't think you realise you've survived until afterwards. When you look back and it becomes like, wow. You get that comparison of like, oh, look where I was, look how I survived. And I think surviving to me is just so basic, and it just comes in different levels as well. Like the initial survival is just making sure that you are alive and you literally get up every day, and you live with what's in your mind, really. And then the second layer of that is deciding and actually, having that autonomy to start doing something else about the way you feel, whether it's having therapy, whatever is available to you, whether it's exercising, whether it's putting makeup on, engaging yourself with your talents, doing something that's really soothing, socializing, being around nice people, and just learning to really center yourself. I think that's the main thing in terms of surviving, is just self-compassion. Like, you learn to, one of the things that experience does for you is like actually teaches you to put yourself very much first, because you have to plan your day, like what we were talking about before. You have to go about your day thinking about whether you're going to be triggered, whether something's going to set you off, whether something's going to remind you, whether you're going to have a flashback. And that still can happen. I'm 7 years down the line now, and I could still have a day where I just wake up and think, oh God, that's really clear in my mind today. Like, why is that so clear? And you just don't know. It can be anything that really brings it on. So I think that is it. Surviving is, it's a 24-hour a day, 7 days a week job, that gets given to you whether you like it or not. And part of that job is like acceptance of what's happened to you. You have to accept it, and you have to accept that was you, and you will get on with your life, and you will move on. Because if you live in that mode of being a victim, I suppose, then it makes it harder for you. And the language you use around it is really important as well. I got to a point where I started just calling my abuser and just stopped using his name, and I think that was really useful for me at that point, as a way of distancing myself and insisting that I'd moved on, and calling myself a survivor, and not saying that I was a victim of, or like, I think the language around it, and that might be different for other people, but for me it was making that conscious decision in that way to just move on, and to talk about it, but to talk about it from my perspective and my experience, and not center that person, so that I could use the experience as like something that leveraged me into things that I was interested in. So yeah, I think that's, to me, that's surviving.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like the idea of using language, and you talked about like the autonomy of using that specific language, as almost like a coping strategy to kind of get you through that and keep it going. I was just wondering, obviously you said that kind of that idea of thriving is almost like looking backwards and seeing what you've been through, and at the time of surviving you were just getting from A to B almost, and kind of going through, it didn't really feel like you were surviving.
Yeah.
But I wondered if looking back now, what kind of coping strategies you developed during that time of survival, and whether you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, I think really getting to know myself again was really important for me, and thinking about what I wanted and the direction that I wanted for my life. Really reassessing, just waking up and having a lot of gratitude. Like, gratitude was a big thing for me, and I can remember sort of waking up every day and thinking like, oh, I actually am alive, and I'm really grateful to go to work, and just I'm going to enjoy my coffee on the way to work. I'm going to enjoy talking to my colleagues. I'm going to enjoy my day. I'm going to, I was working in the jewelers at the time, so I talk to my customers. I'm going to really enjoy their stories and, appreciate their lives as well, and what I'm hearing, and the kind of, and just laughing. Like, I think humor's been really important for me. Laughing, looking back at like old TV shows or just satire that just really makes me laugh, and it's just really silly and really funny, using stuff like that. And then my experience with NFS was in 2018, and then in 2021 I actually converted to Islam as well. So that was me kind of taking hold of my life and saying, this person wanted to stop me from being myself, and now this is me choosing what I want. And I'd kind of had these thoughts for around, probably over a decade. That I knew that I believed in God, but I didn't really know how to go about it. And I've always kind of quietly observed that I knew when it was Ramadan, I knew when it was Eid, I knew things about Islam, that I wanted to try and pull myself closer to it, but in fact just didn't understand what I was supposed to do. And I think just making that conscious decision to become closer to that faith, and obviously eventually embrace it and throw myself into that really gave me a lifeline, I think, really. And it gives you a lot of, Islam has a way of giving you a perspective that whatever happens to you, there is good in it, which kind of, it sounds a bit toxic in part, but when you really break it down, that there is ease within the hardship. The ease doesn't come after the hardship. The ease is in the hardship, because you begin to let go of whatever difficulties you've got, because you have that belief in that higher power, and that God is all encompassing. You don't go to a priest, you don't go to a preacher, you don't go through someone else. You literally attach yourself just to Allah. So that gives you that freedom, I think, in life. And that's been my main strategy. And I know that might not be for everyone, but I think in some ways most people have that, or they have to find that higher purpose, whether it's that they're just very spiritual, or they believe in meditation and the universe and planets and alignment and things. And for me, that was, the idea of exploring, who God is, and the kindness and the mercy and the compassion that comes with that faith.
Yeah, thank you so much for explaining kind of your process as well, because I think you said it's unique for everybody, and it's very much everything you've kind of said talks around that getting to know yourself and kind of reconnecting to who you want to be, almost, isn't it? So
yeah, because it's a huge, so an NFS on an instant like that, it's a huge blow to your self-confidence. It really, really is. And then, like, it makes you really reassess your life and think, like, actually, so to me, it was like, I'm alive. Like, why am I alive? And that was a really big question. And also, I think the fact that, people ask me now, like, well, why did you become a Muslim? That seems like really restrictive, and, whatever. And you've left a lot behind of, your old life and things. But to me, it was like, well, I really craved a peaceful life. So to me, that was my safety blanket, and it still is. It's like, thank God, alhamdulillah, that I found that, because I wanted, and that's not for everyone. People might feel safe doing other things, but to me, I felt like I needed to have that control over my life, where I wasn't going to find myself in that position again, because my experience was through domestic abuse. And my way of finding control over that was, the idea of a society where the institution of marriage is very respected, and that anyone you might be involved with, you might get references for, or speak to at length, or just have very direct questions for. So I think, definitely for me, it was like, I just really wanted that peaceful life where my focus was in one place. And it was like, well, if you can't respect me and respect my space, again, like, I came out of this experience not wanting men near me, or around me, or close to me. And again, that's what Islam gave me, was that it's very heavy on boundaries and privacy. So if someone was going to be in my space, I was going to know them very, very well. So it was like, yeah, you know, hijab, I now wear when the carbo face veil, and it gives me that sense of privacy where it's like, okay, it's me and God, and like anyone who wants to come into that is going to be really a special person or a family member. So I think, yeah, just giving me that control back over my life, because looking, you know, the experience that I had was like, okay, well, I had to look back and think, well, how am I at this point? Like, how have I, you know, allowed someone into my life who has done this? And that's not me like victim blaming, but obviously there's going to be a part of the process where I'm going to have to look at what road led me into this, you know. So yeah, that's where I am.
No, and I appreciate you articulated really clearly about kind of, yeah, how your thought process and how you've kind of worked through everything as well, and all that decision making and autonomy and creating boundaries for yourself and stuff sounds really, really empowering, definitely.
Yeah, thank you.
And obviously you've talked about, this was very much your specific kind of experience and way out of all of this kind of thing. But when we talk about kind of the more thriving side of things, I think one of the things that I really appreciated from the outputs of this project was the survivor advice sheet as well, and kind of helping other people to kind of navigate out of that kind of survival mode into that thriving space. I was wondering, Marianne, if you could talk a little bit about kind of where that idea came from, whether it was organic or kind of came out of the project. Or
yeah, it was really just from the project and listening to what people were saying, because a lot of people like sharing their experience, they would kind of put their advice across in some ways, like, you know, you're reflecting on how you dealt with things. And it was quite common for people to say, you know, if I did it again, or if I knew someone else, I would tell them these things. So the advice was just like a running theme throughout, and some of it was just really just like so powerful. And I think that's one of the key points of that project. Like it came from, like, it was a subsequent piece of work to the Reclaiming My Voice project, because in that we were looking at being part of lived experience, like work or participation in an organization. Threaded throughout that was the impact on the individual of the experience of being strangled. So that was kind of the plan for the next point, was how do we explore actually the impact that this has on people, the like really serious psychological impact that it has. And through that, like through a piece of research where you want people to take things away, was this kind of sense of like normalizing what that survival mode looks like, and like, yeah, helping people who are going through it to say like, this is normal, and also things do pass, things will change, you know, but have like compassion for yourself and do whatever you need to do to get through it without any judgment of yourself. Like, I think someone was talking about like sit and eat ice cream, eat whatever you want, and just like no one else cares. Even if you think they do, they don't. So don't worry about it. Eat whatever you want, sleep all day if you want, like if you need to. So it's kind of like that permission. And yeah, I just thought that was really important to like pull out explicitly from the report and put into something else.
Absolutely. I think some of the things that like spoke to, I think the comment you might be thinking about was the eating pizza in bed at 10 p.m, which I was like, you know, maybe we should all take a bit more of that. But yeah, it was still little things as well about like how just, you know, appreciating a hot shower, or like the smell of a nice cup of tea, or things like that. It was just, it's those things that when you're living a busy life you can kind of over just not think about, I guess. So even for me, I was looking at that thinking like it kind of brings you back to like what's important, bringing back to yourself as well.
Yeah. I think as someone who had a lot of self-esteem issues anyway, like it almost turned my life around, where it gave me my life back in a lot of ways, where I'd got to the point where I thought like, no, I'm just going to care about myself. I'm not going to care about what people think. I'm not going to care about, you know, having a public kind of image to people. And I think that's what is really difficult these days with social media and stuff. It's like we all feel like we have to have this really public brand, and it's like, well, I was just like, no, I'm not engaging with that anymore. I'm just going to do what I want to do, and focus on myself and focus on my needs and what's going to be best for me. And that really opened up my life in a lot of positive ways, and my career got better. My kind of, outlook on life got better, because I'd started with the baseline of just myself. Like you say, it sounds really silly if you to sit and tell someone who's like in the depths of PTSD, like, have a really nice shower with smelly soap, and they're like, that's not going to cure me, and it's not, but it's part of a process, and it's part of a process where you can use your sense of self, your sense of gratitude, your sense of being alive, to notice the things around you that actually make you happy and really hold on to them. And it's easier for some people than it is for others, and it's a journey and it's a process, but just start with yourself, and things become a lot simpler.
Yeah, and I think that was something else that came out of the project as well, is that like healing isn't linear, and that all of that process of, it's not going to be this straight road out of it straight through to recovery. I was wondering whether you could speak a little bit more about that, Aisha.
Yeah, definitely really relatable. I've had so many ups and downs, and like I say, even up to present day, there are things where you could just really sit and deep it and say like, oh, like that happened to me, and I'm still really angry. I am so angry about the justice that I didn't get, and things that people said to me, the officers that told me there was nothing wrong with me, that I looked fine, literally, that it was just kind of a tiff between us, and there was kind of nothing they could really kind of heavy that they could really charge with and stuff. Solicitors that I dealt with that tried to put me in the same room as him, just so much stuff that I could still be angry about. And you still sometimes have a day where you think like, why me? Like, why did that have to happen to me? So it's important, like we've been talking about, you have those coping mechanisms that bring you out of that move you on. Definitely not linear. Definitely can see how it affected me in lots of different ways in the beginning, where I sort of job hopped quite a bit when I first came out of that relationship after the experience as well. Had a lot of problems with employment and stuff. Took me a while to sort of find my direction of what I wanted to do. Just felt like I was very alone. No one was listening. And a lot of people sort of look at you and go, oh, you must be really happy now that like you survived that experience, fine now. It doesn't really work like that, because you've left an abusive relationship, like, you don't sort of feel better straight away. So yeah, definitely it's a big long process, and it's not the same for everyone. And there's loads of stuff that you wish you could take a magic pill and like you would forget, and then everything would be fine, and things like, and even with therapy, like you'll go into therapy and you'll think, this is great, this is going to fix me and I'm going to feel so much better, and it's take rounds and rounds and rounds and rounds. And I've only just even had another round of EMDR, which has really worked for me, but you have to be in a place where you're able to tackle that, and you're able to kind of click with the right therapist as well. So there's so much to it, there's so much kind of difficulty to it, and it's very up and down. And there'll be other people in your life that the reality for them, for family, for friends as well, it might be difficult for them. They might not be able to support you in the way that you would hope that they would, or you would expect that they would. So yeah, lots of different elements to it, lots of different points to it, and the reality of it is it's so hard that you do have to just recognize that you have to be really proud of yourself in the end, like whatever you're doing, like, and you don't have to go and be some kind of spokesperson or campaigning and standing outside Number 10 with a placard or something. You don't have to do that, but if you want to do it, then, and it helps, then do that. Like it's just, it comes back to your choices. So I suppose I'm tapping into a bigger kind of topic there, really, about women's choices and the choices that are offered to women. And I think that's something that I actually went to the Survivor Summit with IFAS, and one of the things that got raised there was just about kind of, you know, the life after that people have, and, you know, the medical support after, and how we get people back on their feet. And I think choices is really key to that, because it's like, well, do people have the choice to take a break from work? 9 times out of 10, no. So if they've been through NFS and they don't have the choice to then take a break from work because they're not going to get any kind of income support, or they're going to be hauled up to the job centre like every month, like, are you looking for work, and pressurised, then that's not going to be conducive to their recovery, is it? So there's all these big questions, and that's why NFS specifically, and the trauma that comes from it, like, feeds into so many different areas.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking back on the projects now, how would you describe what the experience has been like for you?
Oh, wow. I think really validating, really empowering, motivational, and I think it's changed me in a really good way, and it's flipped an experience in my life that should have really had such a negative effect on me, and it's turned it into something which is actually something that I'm really proud of. So yeah, I think it's stopped me from being defined by NFS, and it's allowed me to define my own experience and take ownership of it.
Fantastic. That's really amazing to hear. And Marianne, obviously, I wanted to know what your kind of main takeaway has been from working as part of IFAS and working on these projects throughout the last few years.
I think it's just probably the real value in embedding lived experience in an organisation. I think doing that work, like being the facilitator, being the individual who leads on that, it just reminds you why any of us are doing the work, you know. And I think it helps. I think bringing that lived experience into an organisation, particularly when we're doing training and awareness raising, is like trying to help workers to stop and remember that there's a person sat in front of them who's been through this, and like what a harrowing experience it's been. Like think about what they're saying, even though you're hearing stuff like this all the time, or think, you know, that you're so used to listen to really horrible experiences and things like that. It's like, yeah, trying to move away from normalizing listening to that and thinking it's an okay thing that doesn't need intervention and action and like a high risk support plan following it. So yeah, I think that's probably my key takeaway, is to actually just really listen to people sat in front of you. I know that's not always easy with time and resources, but like the lived experience work that we've done at IFAS, I think just centers the human aspect of things and has tried to remind people to, yeah, bring that into your work every day. There's a person sat in front of you who's been through this, like, you know, make sure your response is adequate, because otherwise you'll be left thinking about that, or if the worst happens, you're left with having not taken whatever action you should have taken. So yeah, bringing the seriousness of it to the forefront, but also, yeah, that kind of human element, I think, has been my biggest takeaway.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's something that I've come back to with Marianne so many times, is like, you know, the professional response. No ambulance was called for me. I was asked if I wanted one, but I was so in shock I didn't really know what to say at the time. So no ambulance was called for me. So we don't really know the effect that the NFS has had on me. And I've literally just a couple of weeks ago also been to an ENT appointment and found out that my nose was broken, like, off my face, and it's healed back onto my face in a way that's like closed one of my nostrils, and that's why I've been having like a lot of sinus issues and things. So, you know, it's just things like that. It's like, if you are, you know, in the first place, because there was NFS present, I believe mandatory ambulance called straight away, you know. We need to get that in, but just, you know, that's just a bare minimum.
Absolutely. And yeah, it speaks again to that trivialization or that minimizing of the experience, doesn't it? If steps like that were taken, then it would kind of feed into that culture of taking it a little bit more seriously, wouldn't it?
Yeah, 100%.
And then one last question for you, Aisha. I wanted to know what kind of next steps you would like to see moving forward for the survivor group.
Wow, there's so many things. There's so many things we could do. Everything that we do is so valuable anyway. I know there's always a really big focus on like social media projects and things like that, and awareness on social media. I know a lot of the ladies that are there, they want to get into that, want to talk about that, and plan a bit of a kind of specific campaign. I would love to see I love the idea of helping other survivors after the experience, so I just wonder if there's more that we could do in that way, for people in terms of resources, for things that, whether there's a course we could do, like a Reclaiming My Voice course or something, where we bring people together for peer support, or whether we have buddies or something that people can really like confide in, or help to kind of get them back on track, to sort of lift them up, or some kind of helpline. The possibilities are just endless, honestly. I would love that.
Fantastic. I've written all of those down, and we will definitely revisit those at a later date. Perfect. Was there anything that either of you wanted to kind of say that you didn't get a chance to say before we wrap up here?
I don't think so. Just that I hope the funding continues and the attention to the work the momentum keeps up. So yeah, it's really important.
Definitely, yeah, definitely. Really, I think we need all eyes on this specific cause. I can see obviously there's movement in certain policies that are coming through and things like that, but I think there's definitely it's okay to ban things, it's okay to restrict things, but there's a lot more work to do in terms of culture and the way people view things like this, because they're still going to be able to access it in one way or another. So yeah, definitely IFAS is just invaluable, amazing.
I think that's a perfect place to end. Thank you so much for both of your contributions.
Thank
you.
Thank you for listening to this episode. You can go onto our website ifas.org.uk to access further reports, research and podcasts on strangulation.